Ciao, my loves. This is Gemma with your moon to moon reading. This is from July 1st to July 10th, the last quarter, or also known as the third quarter moon, unto the new moon. This moon to moon cycle is really working on the level of, we've been for the last month been working on the material realm and how we create. And since Mercury went back direct, but especially since Saturn and Jupiter are still in retrograde, they really are working the deeper aspects of the mind. I want you to think the astral, the causal mind. This is where a lot of hidden things are within the subconscious. This is recreating a spiritual consciousness within the collective. And for many of you, this is going to arise a little bit different based on your own chart and where these unique planets are placed. However, let's get into this week, what's coming through. Okay, so this week is going to work the mind's power to create, and it's going to work on the emotional body, or how certain emotions are elicited or tied to mental past programming. This is really still working within actually two cardinal aspects of the 4th and the 10th. So foundations, how we nurture ourselves, what we communicate to ourselves, how we build security, stability. And for many of you on a mundane level, that's going to look like home, career, finances. It's also going to look a lot like how are we communicating what we need and what we want and what moves through us around those things. Okay, so the sun's unique placement as it begins this moon to moon is breaking open aspects of self. It's working, the sun starts off in Gemini in Aradra, and it is working to create a clearing. The sun's placement here, I really want to point out that this unique nakshatra or lunar placement is important because it works on the mind's potency of co-creation and how divine communicates with that co-creative force, how we bring light to it and how that moves through us. The aspect here is it can be very explosive. We can have quick insights. We can have quick judgments. This is really going to show further in the week about boundaries that are coming up. Actually, boundaries are coming up right now. So what's happening is the moon is washing away. So the moon starts this moon-to-moon cycle of the third quarter to the new moon in a water sign, in the heart of Pisces in Uttara Bhadrapada, which is ruled by Saturn. So this gives us a deeper inclination and understanding that the moon's aspect here is moving beyond time-space. It's really shifting the way that things are moving through our perceptive mind, our emotional mind, and how divine is communicating and how we are reflecting the light of who we are and understanding our world and how we move through our world and how we are actually receiving our world as well. So the moon's placement here is really going to shift. It's water to water. For those of you that aren't joining me on Patreon, I go through these higher esoteric elemental practices and elemental intelligence and how to work with that there. If you want, I'll include the link below, but let's get into the moon. The moon is going to work on washing away and will aid in reaching a new point of created cosmic birth. This is the aspect of the moon starting in Pisces, and then the new moon will happen in Cancer in Purnavasu, which is Jupiter-ruled nakshatra. So again, we have this Jupiter-Saturn interplay, and we really are seeing the spiritual consciousness shift subject-object. Subject-object is duality. It's how we perceive our subjective reality in relationship to ourself, and that is switching, and it's switching on a deeper level, and it has been all moving, and now things are picking up pace in terms of that spiritual consciousness switching and trying to bring more of an immersion of subject-object, meaning you're not in a dualistic state, constantly assessing and analyzing your external world and how you fit into it or what you need to do or any of those things. It's moving more towards the 4D consciousness of oneness. However, that shift is not easy for the collective, for the individual. So this moon is really moving new cosmic birth from laying certain things to rest and going into deeper esoteric waters of Cancer, moving how things are communicating from the higher mind or from the soul level, and how we need to nourish and give birth to something new. So this new moon is really going to mark a very esoteric point in terms of rebirth. Mercury is carrying really through spirit into material realm, and it's aiding in new expansive qualities. Especially Mercury is really working to break down dualistic perspectives within self, home, foundations, building wealth, career. Spiritually, this is how we nourish ourselves. How are we building our world? How we hold ourselves up within this world, and the things we tell ourselves that create our perception of home and foundation, how we feel safe, what's our contribution, even our legacy, how are things contributing to us, and what we need to actually feel at peace at home. This is all coming through. What is your foundation of what you want to communicate and what's communicating with you, and feeling grounded and wealthy in all that already is on a deeper perspective coming through. There is a self within a greater context is emerging through this. That means the inner self, the soul self, is trying to emerge past some of the material constructs that we place on ourselves or that we think we need in order to strive, survive, to thrive, all of those. This is emerging and it's opening up. So walls must come down, and this is where the friction is coming from, if you are experiencing any friction. The sun wants more. The sun represents your soul and your inner light. It is the truth. It doesn't want any more limits. This is going to challenge the communication that is being igniting within you. This is your heart's desires, your soul communicating with you, your intuition, your higher self. This co-creative aspect and purpose is having maybe an engagement with the worlds. And this is what I mean in terms of what's coming through is be really mindful of the ways that we retreat are going to be shown. This is shown from the Piscean level and is really the water to water on this week, from Pisces, the moon coming into Pisces on the 1st of July and ending in a new moon in Cancer, or moving from Gemini to Cancer, is going to show really how we retreat and how we rebirth. Okay. And this is such an important way, because all of these things, these walls within the conscious and the emotional mind, are reworking. And sometimes we retreat and we put up rules and boundaries and opinions and judgments and criteria on how other people need to show up in our lives, or how we see ourselves, or what life needs to look like in order for us to feel at home and fulfilled. This is being challenged. These are walls. They're also mechanisms that we retreat from the grace of God. So these are going to show up. And how it shows up for you, it's going to be different. But it's really, these energies are working to show anything that is self-imposed walls that is contributing to an external seeking. That means seeking more outside yourself, not enough, trying to fix, trying to seek in a relationship, trying to seek in anything that is external, trying to use aspects of the ego to define self so we can receive a little bit more love, a little bit more foundation, any aspects of this seeking externally is going to show up. And as the sun is asking for more expansion, it's going to bring more space. It's placed right now in Gemini. It's bringing more space for some of these things to come through. And it's working to break down these barriers of misconception. This nurturing is really coming through, motherly nurturing aspects of self. And how are we nurturing what is already in our life? Water is playing a very important aspect, and it will go through all of the phases. And I want you to think about, let's just talk about from a very basic elemental. Again, I will go through this if you are with me on Patreon. But on a very basic level, it is it's going through the energetic phase of water becoming steam. The moon moves through Aries. So water heats and becomes steam starting tomorrow, July 3rd. And then it begins to condensate where it meets air and it becomes more ethereal. And this is where the moon is moving into more of the air sign at the end of the week, July 7th and into July 8th. So here we have this water being transformed. And what's really happening is the way that we are nourishing and carrying in consciousness, water's cohesion, the way that everything is carrying our experiences and our understanding is literally going through that cycle of breaking it open, changing its construct and its structures, expanding how we nourish and understand ourselves, and then coming back down and re-nourishing the mind. An important aspect that is being highlighted here is Mrigashira. This is ruled by the deity of Soma. This is life nectar. The important part for you to understand in this is divine consciousness is coming over, just like water cycles comes back down. It is nourishing a new understanding, directive, and also nourishing the inner being so co-creation can be more in alignment. Okay, this is really a very transformational week within the mind. And for some of you, it might be subtle, and for others of you, it might be a little bit more pressurized and a little bit more friction. Again, it's going to be based on where your planets are, especially in their lunar placements, lunar house placements, nakshatras. But this higher aspect is moving things so we understand from an intuitive mind, and we are nourishing with one consciousness and not using our emotions and our mind to then recreate some of the boundaries that we have accumulated over years, lifetimes, whatever. Okay, what we see is being created through the mind. This is very important. How our external environment communicates back to us is going to occur this week. The processes and definitions we place. Boundaries again will come up. I want you to be mindful. These are ego boundaries I'm talking about. Ego boundaries that keep the wealth of life or others away through definitions that are defining self within the world. That is just going to continue to move one out to communicate yourself, to perpetuate the self, to glorify the self, and to get recognition and nourish that self from an external source. These energies are asking you to break down the barriers that are creating the structure where you are seeking outside of self to glorify the ego, the personality, the strong suits, or the ways that you receive nurturance and praise for qualities that are not of you, but gifted to you. So it's really working a lot of this self-seeking instead of self coming home. And this is going to challenge. So that's going to work at the boundaries that are perpetuating any of that kind of psyche mentality. When we move from love, I want you to understand these boundaries and how to work with it on a higher esoteric and principle law practice. When we move from love and we focus energy on inner being, we are working with a law of like attracts like. Then we don't have to create a false boundary through judgment, through predication of ego, through a previous experience, or you're not doing this the way I like it, and so I'm not going to allow you into my life or give you any of my energy. But when actuality, when we move from a place of love and we understand that all consciousness is one consciousness, and everybody is just a different shade of that consciousness, and anything that we attract unto ourselves is alike to us, we don't really need a boundary. We can start to focus on love. I really want to highlight this because the 4D consciousness is being awakened within the collective. This is part of the switch between Jupiter and Saturn. The important aspect of 4D consciousness is universal love. It is the alchemical aspect that transcends all. It is the yogic, the heart, Hiranyagarbha. It is all that we all are. It is our very fabric, okay? When we focus on this universal love, this focus on loving self, you will create a natural resonance and you will work with the laws of like attracts like. And then you understand that whatever is likened to you is going to be in service for you. There's no need to create a boundary based on the ego. This is really, these energies are working to sharpen discernment and not intellect or analysis. Okay? When we navigate not through a maze of mental walls, we're not tunnel visioned based off our own definitions, but we begin to navigate on an open sea like Noah of the ark, who had two of each, essentially two animals. He had every gender to regenerate a new world. I want you to think about that symbolically. The open water, the ocean, to generate a new world. This is really where we are moving from. Open up your world to create something new. Everything already lies within you. Everything is within. Work with the laws of like and like, and what is also coming in is a law of multiplicity. So as we begin to break down some of these barriers that are self-imposed by the mind, or the way that we thought we had to operate in this external world, or how we co-created in this external world, the law of multiplicity is really becoming very potent because the veil is thin. That means what you give your awareness to will multiply. Are you creating more of the same? Or are you creating more of from the heart of love and what you want to bring into this world, what needs to move through you? This is going to expedite how you draw unto yourself, how quickly you can manifest. And also, let me just point out, very healing energy, very healing energy. You got to harness your prana. Take your life force and multiply it in love. And that will heal and start to eliminate some of the karmic binds that are within the body. Answers are not outside of you. These energies are really working the mind on deeper levels to gain power over manifestations. Life doesn't happen to you, but this is going to shift the way you are manifesting through these laws. Boundaries from the ego and defined self protect one from divine grace. Remember that when we create boundaries, sometimes we hold ourselves away from divine grace. Step into your divine plan. Step into what is set forth for you. You don't have to figure it out. You just have to welcome its unfolding. And this is what's starting to work, is how the ego is perpetuating. And quite honestly, I'm just going to get real, because we're going to always be real. How you get in your own way is going to show up. And a lot of that is going to come up and through the overthinking and intellectual mind. So it's time to kind of let that go. Remember that when we move from a self of love and we're not holding ourselves away from divine grace, be it through opinions of others, it's really, I'm not going to get into that, but divine grace, then we are not working to perpetuate the ego, but what we're working with is higher principles that are arising. Source will guide you. Source will attract to you. And source and love naturally emit an aura of protection around you. Everyone on an individual and a collective level it is shifting. Look at our external world. We are being called to stop creating boundaries and love each other on a uniform humanity, collective, one consciousness in all forms and beings. There is no need to protect, judge, or arm ourselves. It's only that we need to come back and tap into this natural force of love that creates an aura of protection. And again, you don't really... The intellectual boundaries are going to be, and barriers or over-analysis are going to bind the higher mind, and that's really what's coming through. And I really want to point that out, that like... At this level, when subject-object becomes switched, that's challenging duality. And when that happens, the definitions of how you see yourself and how you see your world and what you know of your world or what you once believed to be foundational is going to shift. For many of you, it could feel like your whole world is upside down. For many of you, it might feel like you've gotten a new point of view and clarity, and you can see with more vision. Collectively, as we move into this new moon and further into the fall, new vision and new foresight, the horizon will open up for everybody. Intuition is being strengthened, not intellect. Let the energy arise within you and not to be dictated by you. Remember, the mind is a connection to the all. And I really want to point out, on an esoteric and an energetic elemental level, one last note, that the levels and the qualities of the mind are an elemental process. The more that we are clearing the mind, the body will naturally clear itself. You will start to tap in, especially now, into the higher realms of your inner consciousness, and life will seem easier. It will need less efforting because the way that you dictated your life, you can trust more on how things are moving through you and how you are guided from your inner mind and not your analysis, paralysis, barrier, ego mind of what has happened before. New slates this is a whole new becoming, and it is going to work the mind. So as much as you can, free your mind, breath work, meditation. And as I send you off with this moon to moon, my loves, trust. Trust that everyone and everything is a golden link in your divine plan. Trust the little inklings within your heart. Trust that there is nothing missing and that you have everything to build a whole new world. Sail your ship, sail it in peace, create calm waters through the mind. You can join me on Patreon. I'll include the link below. Every month I'll do a moon to moon special ceremony, and then I go into these weeklies on how to talk about the esoteric or the elemental processes of how to work with these energies from a spiritual standpoint, spiritual practices, working with herbs, and as well as alchemical or spell work as well, if you'd like. Okay, my loves, sending you tanti baci, lots and lots of kisses. Until next week, don't forget to follow me on IG as well. Until next week, we'll chat soon.